Richard, welcome to Business Spectator. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, nice to be with you.
Now, you get the impression with the G20 that it's all happening anyway. You know, that they've got 900 actions, which we'll get to in a moment, but that are going to increase global GDP by 2%. So why do they need B20 to give them a shove up?
Well, Alan, I think B20 has been really important, I think, because governments can't do this on their own. Governments, post the crisis, monetary policy is pretty well exhausted, or there's no room to move. Fiscal policy is almost done. So business is a big part of driving economic growth, and I think everyone agrees the world hasn't got enough growth. There's not enough jobs. There's something like more than 200 million people around the world unemployed at the moment, and around 300 million youth either not in jobs or not studying. So there's a significant issue. So business is part of the solution, and it's appropriate business works closely with the G20 and in our case with the Australian government to formulate policies. And I think the policy recommendations we've got do go hand in hand with where the Prime Minister and the Treasurer want to take the G20 this year under Australia's chairmanship as well. And I think it's really important that business has a voice, and we've brought a whole bunch of people, 400 or 500 business leaders from around the world into the process this year, and the voice from business is pretty loud and pretty consistent.
Now, there's apparently 900 actions that are going to increase, as I said, GDP by 2%. But isn't it the case that countries basically look after their own national interest? I mean, either they were going to do those things anyway, or they're not going to do it because it's not in their interest. But so, if it is in each country's interest, they will do those things anyway.
Yeah, I think that's right, and certainly in all of these things, countries need to go back and implement them in their own country. And if you think about it, let's assume it's not the case, but let's assume all G20 countries are democracies, and in any one year there's probably half a dozen that are facing an election, so there's always issues they've got in implementing things in any case. But I think what the 2%'s done is galvanise what can we do specifically that will give above trend growth over 5 years. And I think anything that gets implemented that otherwise wasn't going to be is a positive, and if it brings forward policy implementations, that's not a bad thing as well. And the key thing to me will be how this is now monitored and measured, because some things will be easily monitored and measured, other things will be difficult.
Richard, as you said earlier, monetary policy and fiscal policy in most of the larger economies within the G20 has been exhausted.
Yeah.
So where does the funding come to kickstart this massive investment in infrastructure that it envisages?
Yeah, so Stephen, there's a big gap of infrastructure spending gap by 2030 of $10 to $20 trillion or so. It's huge, and there's a significant gap now. In fact, Jack Lew said at the finance ministers meeting on infrastructure roundtable on Friday that in the US they've identified $1 trillion of need right now. So I actually think the Australian policy on this is pretty good policy, which is government gets involved early stage to take out some of the initial risks so the private sector can then invest once a project is investable, and then governments can get out and recycle. So I think that's one particular way forward. The other one is in too many projects and too many countries, money's not flowing, and that's as a consequence of some of the financial regulations that have been put in place post the crisis. So that's got to be sorted out as well. So there's a bunch of things need to be done to solve the issue, but it's worth doing because infrastructure spending brings about economic growth and jobs and productivity improvements down the track. So it's actually a big prize, I reckon, if we can get it going.
Do you think we're going to have an infrastructure boom globally?
I think it's one of the things, Robert, that one of the things governments can help facilitate that can give a pretty quick shot into the economy. And I think we're going to, there's no doubt that the Australian government's focused on infrastructure, and based on Secretary Lew's comments on the weekend and the German finance ministers and others, I think there's a very strong focus on infrastructure. And then the developing countries, there was the finance minister from Indonesia made an impassioned speech, if you like, about the need for the policies to be implemented so that the infrastructure in Indonesia can get up and running. And you just got to try and drive from Jakarta Airport into the city to understand the need for that in a country like Indonesia. So I think if we're thinking about ways where the global economy can grow at a faster rate, infrastructure is going to be a big part of that.
Within both the B20 and G20 finance ministers' outcomes, there's this kind of applause for the financial sector reforms.
Yeah.
So more capital, more liquidity, all the rest. And yet, that's the opposite of expansion, isn't it?
Yeah.
At a time when you want
Yeah.
the global economy to expand,
Yeah.
you've actually constraining the capacity of the financial system to provide the funding.
Yeah, and that's been our concern, and we've had SMEs and countries say that's causing them grief, and business people around the world are saying. So, but what we're saying is understanding the political imperative of getting the regulations put in place. What we've said is let's get them in as soon as we possibly can, so that we can then understand any unforeseen consequences.
But is it just a political imperative, or is it actually an imperative, full stop, given what occurred
Yeah, that's a good
in
question.
2008?
Well, there's no doubt it's a political imperative. People expect governments to do it, and they don't want to see failures like Lehman Brothers and others. So there's no doubt there's a political imperative, and there was a need to act. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And these regulations are well meant. And again, business isn't saying unwind it all. That's totally unrealistic. And the banking sector's been particularly pragmatic on this. They're basically saying this has to be done because our credibility actually depends on getting it done. But then there are impacts, effects that aren't what was meant to happen, and we need to then look at those.
Because the 2% growth target from G20 is really a 2% above what would
Yes.
otherwise have happened,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's not actually some sort of absolute target, it's a relative one. And in fact, given the contraction that Stephen's talking about in the financial sector, that it still has to occur and is going to occur, in a sense, it could be seen as just making up for, just offsetting what was going to happen, what is going to happen.
I mean, the economic environment that the leaders, G20 leaders, will be staring into when they come together in Brisbane in November is weaker than when Australia assumed the chair of the G20 late last year. So you could argue that. I would argue that therefore the need to do reform in countries and across borders, particularly on trade, is now greater than ever, because otherwise what's going to kickstart these economies? And so my great hope is that will galvanise the leaders into some action, and I'm sure the Prime Minister will be working hard between now and then to get leaders onto the same page that the Australian government's on.
Do you think one of the problems is that large public companies globally are much more risk averse than they were, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, understandably, Robert. I think lots of people in companies, on boards, and companies themselves went through difficult periods when things that we took for granted, like access to debt, disappeared for a period of time. So I think everyone says businesses are sitting on strong balance sheets. That's right, and that's a good thing. And companies aren't easily going to give that up, I think. So potentially businesses are more risk averse. The Governor Stevens has made that comment about Australia. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as the environment's there so that businesses can actually get on, invest, and take appropriate calculated risks in the future.
But it looks as though if governments can't fill the gap, it's got to be the private sector. And the private sector, for whatever reason, is just not as risk-taking as it was.
Yeah, as I say, I think that's right. But markets are pretty unrelenting on requiring companies to grow and to look for growth avenues. And I think we'll find that people do take more growth steps in the years ahead on the basis that the regulatory environment is clear and relatively certain, and on the basis that there's no, an expectation there's no big shocks around the corner. Then I think you'll see a pick-up in activity, and I think also you'll see businesses like ours invest in their own businesses pretty heavily to grow them as well, because that's a safer way of growing.
Richard, one of the interesting things about the B20 process is you get to meet very senior business people from all over the world, all the world's more important economies. Were there wide variances in mindset and confidence between people from the various regions?
No, amazingly, the other way, Stephen. What has really struck me has been the uniformity of views. So, there haven't been a wide range of views in the areas we've focused on anyway, on infrastructure, trade, financing for growth and human capital. There's been, we really quickly got to common set of views on this, and there's been a really strong, as I said, uniformity of views from business leaders around the world.
Did you expect that?
No, I didn't. In fact, I thought get a whole bunch of CEOs in the room and it's going to be like getting a whole lot of bureaucrats in the room who are negotiating some of these things. But it hasn't been like that, and that's been quite gratifying actually.
And what have they been saying about inequality, which is clearly a major problem in the world? Do they want to do something about it, and if so, what?
Yeah, I think, Alan, everyone sees it as a risk and as something that does need to be dealt with. And best, we would argue best dealt with by growing economies, growing the pies, and then making sure that the way.
I would have thought that idea has been discredited.
Yeah.
Really, because that's what everyone was supposed to be doing, is growing the pie, and they did grow the pie, but it's not, and everyone it all helped the people at the top.
There's a wide range of views between governments on this matter, and that'll play itself out, I'm sure, a bit in Brisbane in November. But I think everyone accepts it's a serious issue, and not just the G20. I think the World Economic Forum and others are saying we've somehow got to address this. And I think again it's got to be driven. Eventually, it's going to have to be addressed at a national and enterprise level. But
in fact, you get the sense. It's possibly the subject of a whole other interview, but you get the sense that everyone's out of ideas, right? The whole idea was that's dominated the paradigm of economic thought for 30 or 40 years has been that if you grow the pie and grow the economy, and it'll work out okay. But actually now it didn't work out okay. So now what?
I think it's better. Yeah, I think you could argue in Australia the economic growth we've had over the last 20 years has, on balance, helped most people, not all. Certainly the disadvantaged are probably more disadvantaged. I think Australia's been okay, but you're right. Around the world, it hasn't worked out that way. And it's pretty obvious when you think about it now. It's who's got access to capital, who's got the capacity to take risks and make investments, and that's where the money, the wealth is flowing.
Which is Thomas Piketty's thesis.
Yeah, that's right. So you're right. It's probably a subject for another day. What's the way through it? That's a challenge. But one thing's for sure: it's not by shrinking the pie, because if you reduce the pie, then that's going to create more issues, I think.
Do we take too narrow a view of that? Because we tend to look at it within individual economies. Because if you look at the last 20 years, the transfer of capital and knowledge and everything and the improvement in living standards in the developing world has been profound.
Yeah. So look at China, for example. So we probably take a Western view on it, which is serious. But if you look at China, then they would argue that economic growth has been a terrific outcome for the people in that country, or for many people in that country.
What are we going to do with our labour restrictions in whether it be Australia, whether it be Europe, perhaps less so in the US, which keep people in jobs, maybe, but make it very hard for young people to get jobs?
Yeah, one of the themes of the B20 recommendations, Robert, is that flexibility and labour is a key part of that. And that's not just in terms of some of the old ways we think about labour, but it's also across borders. I had a conversation with a business person from Silicon Valley who'd established a business there, and he wanted to employ a couple of thousand technical people to work in his digital business, and would happily have gone to get them from Spain and done it online, and the rules and regulations won't let him do that. So there's a bunch of things that we can do, I think, to unravel that and create more flexibility across borders. But again, it's one of these issues that goes to country sovereign border issues, and they are politically hot issues. But the world will be a better place if there's more flexibility. But I'd hasten to add, that doesn't mean that what we're saying is more flexibility means you pay people less. It goes to Alan's point. Actually, flexibility has got to lead to a situation where wealth is better distributed amongst the people who need it.
Can we just talk about Wesfarmers for a minute?
Yeah.
Everyone's assuming you're going to make a big takeover offer fairly soon. So first question is that right?
Well, they can assume all they like, Alan, but we're a very financially disciplined organisation. We're investing heavily in our businesses. We look to manage the portfolio. We've sold our insurance business, and if an opportunity comes up, we'll take it, but we'll be disciplined about it and patient.
But are you okay? All right. But are you looking for opportunities?
Yes, we are.
You're not sitting there waiting for them to come through the door.
No, we look because we've got a balance sheet that has the capacity to do things. We've got, we think, the human resource capacity, which is a really important part of our ability to bring businesses into the group and create value. So certainly we've got the capacity.
How much capacity do you have?
As much as we want, I think. Because my view on that is if the right opportunity comes along and we need the support of our shareholders and financiers, then they will do it for the right opportunity. And equally,
could you double the size of Wesfarmers?
We could do anything potentially, but
that's a yes.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's a really hypothetical yes. That's a there's not too many companies around, so probably not actually. But we don't rule anything out if it makes sense. But then you've got to be able to fund it, and you've got to have the human resource capacity.
To put that a different way, to move the dial with so something other than an incremental deal, to move the dial, what's the minimum size of a deal you need to do? Is it a $5 billion deal or a $10 billion deal?
Well, yeah, we think we can move the dial just by investing the money we owe in our existing businesses over time.
You haven't moved it much, though.
No, yeah, well,
we don't believe that.
I know that. I know you don't. There's still a way to go in Coles and Target and other business, Bunnings. To move the dial now, we've got 1.1 million shares on issue, so you can do the sums to get a reasonable uplift. And we don't look at EPS, but the market does. If you want a decent uplift in EPS and long run TSR, then it has to be of a size. But we'll still do small things like the Pacific Pac Brands workwear thing because it adds to a business we've got, and we'll still look at those things.
Do you feel the pressure to do something? Because the big gains on the Coles portfolio are behind you, so the rate of growth from that has to taper.
I can absolutely stare you in the eyes and say I don't feel the pressure from doing it. And actually, the more people who say you guys should be doing something, the more pressure I don't feel, because I've been around long enough to know that the euphoria of announcing a deal lasts for about a week, and the consequences of doing a bad deal last for a lifetime. And so I don't think our shareholders expect us to do stupid things either. We've got a lot of retail shareholders. They love the dividend flow. If we've got excess money and we give it back to them, they're quite happy with that. And if we find a need, we'll come asking for it again.
Just taking you up on stupid things. When you bought Coles, you told your shareholders that there would be a fall in equity returns for a year or two. Could you do that today? Could you actually, whatever the purchase might be, could you say to your shareholders, look, this is a long-term view, the return on our equity will fall for the next 2 or 3 years?
I think it's much harder now, Robert, and certainly it'd be hard if we said to them, your dividend's going to fall. I think that'd be...
And that's what happened with Coles, didn't it?
Well, it did it, yes. Unfortunately. Return on equity is one thing, but if shareholders felt in the near term there was going to be a price to pay, then they'd I think, struggle to support. So, I think we're in a different world. And
yet you transformed the company with that takeover. Yeah. It was well worth the reduction in dividend.
Yeah, it was. It's been good. And we said at the time, give us 5 years. It's harder, I think, to go to markets these days and say, give us 5 years.
Isn't that a tragedy?
Yeah, well, maybe we'll try it again one day.
Hey, what do you think of the hospitals business?
We like the sector. I mean, Alan, we look at things that we think have got unstoppable momentum. So energy, water, food, aged care, and health would all fall into that category. But then we put a financial sieve in place, and can we make an investment that's going to work? And so we've looked at businesses in that sector. We just haven't been able to come up with valuations that make sense from our point of view.
Thanks for joining us, Richard.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.